The 2023 World Freedom Press Index has seen China drop down to the second lowest ranking, just one above North Korea. The Chinese regime conducts a far-reaching campaign of repression against journalists in China and prevents free access to information. But recent years have seen it export its system to other countries. More on this from NTD's Malcolm Hudson.
China has dropped down to one of the lowest World Freedom Press Index rankings, coming second only to North Korea. It's the world's biggest jailer of journalists and one of the biggest exporters of propaganda content. But China's media control efforts aren't limited to its own borders. Fiona O'Brien, the UK Director for Reporters Without Borders, said China is seeking to export its system abroad.
China's made no secret of its ambition to create a new media world order, to change the way that media ecosystems work. And Hong Kong is a very good example of that. What China has done in Hong Kong is to rip up the British-Sino Treaty that was arranged in the 1980s pre-handover, and in complete disregard for that, to trample on its obligations to press freedom. Its laws are extraordinarily restrictive, and its ambition is to export the model that it currently uses in China to other territories, including Hong Kong.
Since Beijing introduced the national security law in mid-2020, the situation in Hong Kong has declined dramatically. The law means authorities can punish people for vaguely defined crimes, for things such as subversion, terrorism, and collusion with foreign forces. But Beijing has the power to decide how the law is interpreted. Editor for BBC News Chinese, Howard Jiang, said a Chinese official called the law a hanging sword.
When the Chinese government pushed out the national security law, one of the officials did say, we're not going to use it every day, but it will be like a hanging sword over your head. And if you offend, you'll be punished by the full force of the law.
He said that over the last 5 years, and in regards to press freedom, Hong Kong has gone from relatively free to strictly controlled. Business news and non-political news still has some freedom.
But anything that's politically sensitive, and I would say self-censorship is becoming a new norm. Most journalists would know what not to say, almost becoming as sensitive as mainland colleagues. And that's the direct impression I have every time I visit Hong Kong now.
During the 2019 Hong Kong protests, hundreds of journalists were detained, indicted, and were victims of police violence. In 2021, a dozen journalists were arrested in a new wave of arrests, the same year that 2 major independent news outlets were forcefully shut down. More than 5 others chose to shut down too due to concerns around risk. O'Brien said the toolkit used by oppressive regimes is expanding and largely linked with advances in technology.
Vietnam brought in internet laws which were mirroring those of China a few years ago. There's a training centre for journalists right on the border with Vietnam, so China is very much trying to propel itself through the region and beyond.
She added that the international community needs to take measure of what's happening and work together with other like-minded nations to combat China's ambitions before it's too late. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, London.